"You owe us," my mom declared when I refused to pay their mortgage. "I'm done being the family ATM for 20 years. The next day, Mom called in a panic. The day I finally stood up for myself started like any other family gathering. My kids were excited to see their grandparents. I wasn't. My stomach knotted as I pulled into my parents' driveway, the familiar sense of dread washing over me. Their modest two-story house looked the same as always, well kept on the outside, toxic on the inside. My daughter Emma clutched her homemade card for Grandma. My son Tyler carried the dessert we'd brought. Their innocent excitement made what happened next even more painful. We rang the doorbell. Mom answered, her smile fading when she saw the kids. "Stan, we weren't expecting the children." I blinked. "I told you I was bringing them. We discussed this last week." She glanced over her shoulder, lowering her voice. "We only set the table for adults and Lauren's kids. There's not enough room." My heart dropped. Not for me, I was used to this treatment, but for my children. They were old enough now to notice the difference in how they were treated compared to my sister's kids. "You're saying my children can't join a family dinner, but Lauren's can." Mom sighed like I was being difficult. "Lauren's kids are already here. We can't just add 2 more plates." Tyler looked up at me, confusion in his eyes. "Dad, what's wrong?" I placed my hand on his shoulder, steadying myself as much as him. "Nothing, buddy. There's been a misunderstanding." Mom tried to usher me in alone. "The kids can wait in the living room while we eat. I'll make them plates after." After, always after. My kids always came after Lauren's in every way that mattered to my parents. I spotted my father at the dining table, Lauren beside him, her 3 children seated at what had always been the main table. A small card table was shoved in the corner, presumably where my kids would be exiled. 20 years of being the family afterthought crystallized in that moment. 20 years of loans to my parents that were never repaid. 20 years of being good enough to help with their mortgage, but not good enough for my children to have a seat at their table. I made a decision. "We're leaving." Mom grabbed my arm. "Don't be dramatic, Stanley." "I'm not being dramatic, I'm being a father." I kept my voice low but firm. "And starting today, I'm no longer paying your mortgage." The room went silent. My father's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "What did you say?" His voice had that dangerous edge I remembered from childhood. "You heard me. I'm done. Find someone else to pay your bills while you treat their children like second-class family members." Lauren scoffed. "Are you seriously threatening Mom and Dad over seating arrangements?" I looked at my sister, always the favorite, always protected, always excused. "This isn't about seating arrangements. This is about years of being used as a financial safety net while being treated like an unwelcome guest." My father stood up, his face reddening. "After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? Besides, take my money and treat my children like they don't matter." The truth hung in the air between us. They had done nothing, they had given nothing, they had only taken. I turned to my children. "Let's go, guys, we're getting pizza." As we walked out, I heard my mother's panicked whispers to my father. They weren't concerned about losing me. They were concerned about losing my money. The next week passed in blessed silence. No calls from my parents, though Lauren sent several texts alternating between guilt trips and insults. I blocked her number. Then came the frantic call from Mom. "Lauren's been fired. They're accusing her of stealing from the company. You have to help us." I almost laughed at the predictability. Of course they were calling now. Not to apologize, but because they needed something. "That's unfortunate, but it's Lauren's problem to solve. She was framed, and now your father and I can't make the mortgage payment this month. Lauren was helping us." The pieces clicked together. My parents had been counting on Lauren's income along with mine. They'd put all their eggs in 2 baskets, and now 1 basket was gone. "I thought Lauren had a high-paying marketing job. Weren't you just bragging about her promotion last month?" Mom's voice turned desperate. "She's been having some difficulties, financial difficulties. She needed to borrow against her salary, but that's not important right now. We need $3,000 for the mortgage by Friday." "No," the silence on the other end was deafening. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean, no, I'm not giving you money, not anymore. But your father and I will lose the house. Then you'll lose the house." I hung up, my hands trembling. Years of therapy had prepared me for this moment, but it still felt surreal to finally draw the line. 3 days later, Dad had chest pains. Mom called me instead of 911. Your father's clutching his chest. What should I do? I already had my keys in hand, rushing toward my car. Despite everything, I couldn't ignore a medical emergency. Call an ambulance, Mom, right now. But the ambulance costs money. Can't you just come over and drive him? For a moment, I couldn't speak. Even now, with Dad potentially having a heart attack, their first concern was financial. Call 911, Mom. Now, I'll meet you at the hospital. At the hospital, Dad was diagnosed with severe anxiety and elevated blood pressure, not a heart attack. The doctor prescribed medication and recommended stress reduction. As I paid the emergency room bill, Mom hovered beside me. The mortgage is due tomorrow, Stanley. I stared at her in disbelief. Her husband had just had a health scare, and all she could think about was money. Did you hear what the doctor said about reducing stress? Maybe worrying less about money would help. How can we not worry about money when you've abandoned us? We're your parents. I looked at her, really looked at her. This small woman who had given birth to me but never truly supported me, who had always seen me as a resource rather than a son. You're right, you are my parents, and parents are supposed to love their children equally. They're supposed to care about their grandchildren equally. They're supposed to build their children up, not tear them down to build up their favorite. She blinked rapidly, tears forming, not from remorse, I realized, but from the realization that her financial well was running dry. We've always loved you, Stanley. No, you've always used me. There's a difference. I handed her the hospital discharge papers and walked out. The next week, their mortgage went unpaid. The week after that, they received their first warning letter from the bank. My younger brother, Jake, called to tell me Mom was in a panic. She's blaming you for everything, he said. Says you abandoned the family when they needed you most. Jake had always seen through our parents' favoritism. As the youngest, he'd been ignored rather than used, somehow both better and worse than my experience. Are you okay there? I asked him. He sighed. I'm looking for an apartment. Can't stand being around them anymore. Mom keeps trying to get me to call you about the money. Don't let them drag you into this. I won't, but Stan, there's something you should know. That money you've been sending for the mortgage, a lot of it went to Lauren. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you mean? Lauren's been in financial trouble for years. Gambling. She'd lose everything, then come crying to Mom and Dad. They'd give her your mortgage money, then guilt you into sending more. The betrayal cut deep, even though I should have expected it. They hadn't just favored Lauren, they'd actively stolen from me to support her. Thanks for telling me, Jake, and if you need a place to stay while you look for an apartment, my door is open. 2 days later, my mother appeared on my doorstep. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually immaculate hair disheveled. We're going to lose the house, Stanley. Is that what you want, to see your parents homeless? I leaned against the doorframe, keeping the door half closed. What I wanted was to be treated like I mattered. What I wanted was for my children to be valued as much as Lauren's. This isn't about childhood jealousy. This is about our home. No, this is about consequences. For years, you've taken my money while treating me like an outsider. You've stolen from me to give to Lauren. You've rejected my children while embracing hers. Her face contorted with anger. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, you owe us. And there it was, the core belief that had poisoned our relationship from the beginning, that I owed them for doing the basic duties of parenthood. I don't owe you anything, not anymore. I closed the door on her shocked face. Through the window, I watched her pound on the door, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear. Then she left, and a weight lifted from my shoulders. That night, Jake called in tears. They'd kicked him out for refusing to beg me for money. They said if I wasn't going to help the family, I wasn't welcome. I didn't hesitate. Come stay with me for as long as you need. With Jake's arrival, a new chapter began. 2 brothers, healing from the same wounds, building a healthier version of family. The decision to cut ties with my parents didn't happen overnight. It was the culmination of a lifetime of small injuries, invisible cuts that never properly healed. I remember as a child watching Lauren open mountains of Christmas presents while I received practical items, clothes for school, notebooks, things I needed rather than wanted. At the time, I told myself it made sense. I was the responsible one. Lauren was the baby of the family. I didn't realize then that responsible was just their code for useful. My father had always struggled financially. A series of failed business ventures had left the family teetering on the edge of bankruptcy more times than I could count. Each time, he'd rally with a new scheme, a new sure thing that would solve all our problems. The pattern started when I got my first job at 16. Dad needed money to keep the electricity on. Just a small loan, he'd said. He never paid it back. By the time I graduated college, I was sending home a third of each paycheck, money for bills, for car repairs, for Lauren's college tuition when she decided halfway through that she wanted to switch majors for the third time. I did it because that's what family was supposed to do, support each other, help each other. But in my family, the support only flowed in one direction. Over the next few months, my parents continued their desperate attempts to regain their financial lifeline. They sent relatives to plead their case. They showed up at my workplace. They even tried using Lauren's children as emotional leverage. The worst was when they sent my uncle, Dad's older brother, to talk some sense into me. My uncle had always been kind to me growing up, one of the few adults who seemed to actually see me. Having him show up at my door carrying their water felt like another betrayal. "Your father's not well, Stan," he said, sitting uncomfortably on my couch. "His blood pressure's through the roof. Your mother's talking about taking a second job to make ends meet." "They have options," I replied. "They could sell the house, downsize. Dad could finally retire and take his pension. Lauren could get a job that doesn't involve stealing from her employer." My uncle winced. "They're not perfect, but they're your parents. Being a parent doesn't give you the right to exploit your children." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, I'm not saying they did right by you. Hell, I've been telling your father for years that he leans on you too hard, but cutting them off completely? That's harsh, don't you think?" I thought about the card table where my children would have been exiled. About the countless times I'd watched Lauren's children receive special treatment while mine were treated as an inconvenience. About the years of financial drain that had delayed my own family's goals, the home renovation we'd put off, the vacation fund that never grew, the college savings accounts that remained depressingly small. "No," I said finally. "I don't think it's harsh. I think it's necessary." Uncle left without the check he'd come for, but with something to think about. A week later, he called me. "I talked to your dad again," he said. "Really talked to him about how they've treated you and Jake." I waited, expecting another guilt trip. "He doesn't get it, Stan. Neither of them do. They've convinced themselves they're the victims in all this, martyrs who sacrificed everything for ungrateful children." I wasn't surprised. "Did you expect anything else?" "I guess I hoped," he admitted. "Listen, I'm sorry. For whatever it's worth, I should have spoken up more when you were kids. I saw what was happening, but I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere." His apology meant more than I expected. "Thank you." He cleared his throat awkwardly. "If you and Jake need anything, someone to talk to, a place for holidays, whatever, my door's open." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something like hope. Maybe family could still mean something good. Eventually, my parents lost the house. They moved in with Lauren, creating what I imagined was a perfect storm of dysfunction. Jake heard through a cousin that they blamed me entirely, painting themselves as victims of an ungrateful son. Lauren's marriage collapsed under the strain of her parents moving in and her ongoing gambling problems. Her ex-husband reached out to me, concerned about their children. "Your sister needs help, Stan," he said during a call that caught me completely off guard. "Professional help, and your parents are enabling her worst behaviors." I felt a twinge of guilt for my nieces and nephews, caught in the crossfire of adult dysfunction. I'd never wanted to cut them out of my life. I mentioned this to Jake, who had secured his own apartment but still came over for our weekly dinners. "Maybe we could invite them over sometimes," I suggested. "Lauren's kids, they shouldn't suffer because of their mother's choices." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That would be good, but let's be careful. Mom and Dad will try to use them to worm their way back in." He was right. When I reached out to Lauren's ex about having the kids visit, He was enthusiastic until my parents got involved. Suddenly, there were conditions. They wanted to be present for the visits. They needed money for the children's activities. They had a list of demands that had nothing to do with the children's well-being and everything to do with reasserting control. I withdrew the invitation, telling Lauren's ex he could contact me directly if he wanted the children to have a relationship with their uncles. I never heard from him again. 6 months after I'd closed the door on my mother, Melissa and I were enjoying a rare date night when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Lauren. Dad had a stroke. He's asking for you." My heart raced, adrenaline flooding my system. Despite everything, the news hit me hard. I showed Melissa the text. "What do you want to do?" she asked, covering my hand with hers. I stared at the message, conflicted. Part of me wanted to rush to the hospital. Another part remembered every manipulation, every guilt trip, every betrayal. "I don't know if it's real," I admitted. "They've lied before to get me to come running." Melissa nodded understanding. "Why don't you call the hospital directly? Verify he's there before you decide." It was a sensible suggestion. I called the hospital, and to my surprise, my father had indeed been admitted with a stroke. It wasn't a manipulation tactic, or at least not entirely. We paid for our dinner and drove to the hospital in silence. Melissa squeezed my hand as we walked through the automatic doors, her presence a silent reassurance. Whatever happened, I wasn't alone. Lauren was in the waiting room, her face puffy from crying. My mother sat beside her, looking older than I remembered. Jake was notably absent. They hadn't bothered to call him. Lauren spotted me first. "Oh, thank God you came. He's been asking for you." Mom stood, taking a hesitant step toward me. "Stanley," I raised a hand, stopping her. "I'm here for Dad, that's all." A nurse led me to his room. Dad lay in the hospital bed, diminished somehow. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped and hummed. His right side was partially paralyzed, his speech slurred but understandable. "Son," he said when he saw me, his good hand reaching out. I didn't take it. "They said you were asking for me. Wanted to see you before," he struggled with the words, "while I still could." I waited for more, an apology perhaps, some acknowledgement of the damage he'd done. It didn't come. "Need your help," he said finally. "With the bills, your mother can't." I stared at him, the reality hitting me like a physical blow. Even now, even here, it was about money, not reconciliation, not healing, just another attempt to reestablish the financial pipeline. "Is that really why you asked for me? For money?" Confusion crossed his face. "Family helps family." "Not in our family," I said quietly. "In our family, I help and you take. That's not how it works anymore." I turned to leave, my chest tight with a grief that had nothing to do with his stroke and everything to do with the father I had never really had. "Stanley!" His voice was urgent now. "Please!" I paused at the door but didn't turn around. "I'll pay this hospital bill for the care you've received today. After that, we're done." In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe through the tightness in my chest. A passing nurse asked if I was okay. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. When I returned to the waiting room, Mom rushed toward me. "What did he say? Is he making sense?" "He's coherent," I replied, my voice distant to my own ears. "And still concerned about money." Her face crumpled. "The insurance won't cover everything, and we still have rent, utilities." "I'll pay for his medical care," I said. "That's it, nothing else." Lauren stepped forward, her expression harder. "He's your father. He raised you." Did he? I looked at them both, these women who had been central figures in my life but had never truly seen me. "I'm going to talk to the billing department. Then I'm leaving." As I walked away, Mom called after me. "Stanley, please, we need you." I stopped but didn't turn around. "No, you don't need me. You need my money. There's a difference." Melissa was waiting by the elevator, concerned in her eyes. I told her what had happened as we rode down to the billing department. She listened without interrupting, her hand a steady presence on my back. "You're doing the right thing," she said when I finished. "Paying for his medical care is compassionate. Setting boundaries is healthy." I nodded, grateful for her clarity when my own thoughts were so turbulent. A week later, Jake and I visited Dad together. He'd been moved to a rehabilitation facility where he'd stay until he regained enough function to manage at home. Jake had been hesitant to come, but I thought it important that we both get closure. Dad seemed genuinely happy to see Jake, reaching for him with his good hand. "My boy," he said, his speech still slurred but clearer than before. Jake remained stiff, uncomfortable. "How are you feeling, Dad?" "Better now that you're here." Dad's gaze shifted between us. "Both of you, my sons." I sat in the chair beside his bed. "We came to talk, Dad, about the future." His expression turned wary. "What about it?" "I've arranged to pay for your care here," I said, "and I've set up an account for your outpatient therapy after you're discharged." Relief flooded his face, quickly replaced by confusion when I continued. "But that's all. There won't be any more money for you or for Mom. Not for the rent, not for Lauren, not for anything else. Jake and I are done being your financial backup plan." Dad's face hardened, the familiar anger returning even through his partial paralysis. "After everything we've done for you?" "That's just it, Dad," Jake interrupted. "What have you done for us, really?" Dad stared at him, genuinely confused. "We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head." "That's the bare minimum," I said quietly. "That's what parents are supposed to do. You ungrateful." I stood up, cutting him off. "We didn't come for an argument. We came to make sure you understood the new reality. You're our father and we don't want you to suffer, but we're not your bank anymore." As we left, Dad called after us, his voice breaking. "You can't just abandon family." Jake stopped, turning back. "That's the thing, Dad. You abandoned us long ago. You just never realized it because we kept paying the bills." In the car, Jake was quiet, staring out the window. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I shook my head. "No, people like them don't change, they just find new victims." "So what now for us, I mean?" I thought about Melissa, about my children, about the peace we'd found since cutting ties with my parents. Now we build something better, a real family based on love instead of obligation. Jake nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Some people ask if I miss my parents. I don't. I miss the idea of parents, loving, supportive people who want the best for you. I never actually had that. What I have now is peace. What I have now is a home where all children are equally welcome at the table. What I have now is the knowledge that I broke the cycle, and my children will never know what it feels like to be valued only for what they can provide. Sometimes family isn't who raised you. Sometimes it's who you choose to keep in your life after growing up and recognizing your worth. I chose myself. I chose my children. I choose truth over obligation. And I've never once regretted that choice.